One of the best things you can do is just spend some time with a team member or a co-worker that has different types of disabilities and understand what they go through on a daily basis. It's very hard for the empathy level not to go up. I have this saying where empathy drives awareness and awareness instigates action. With the rate that Gen AI is going, we want to be driving that bus and be recognized as a leader in truly inclusive Gen AI.
Welcome to another episode of TechBytes. But more importantly, that was Eamon McErlean, Vice President and Global Head of Accessibility here at ServiceNow. And also joining us on this episode is his team member in the world of accessibility, Tony Morales. And that is what we're talking about here today. Accessibility. Not just what we're doing here at ServiceNow, but giving everyone a better understanding of the idea, where accessibility plays a role, and why you should be bringing up accessibility at the beginning of each conversation when it comes to development and delivery. And this is the first in our series of episodes about accessibility, so please make sure you hit subscribe on whatever device you're listening on. And also please check out the Accessibility and Gen AI podcast, hosted by Eamon and Joe Devon, the founder of Global Accessibility Awareness Day, and we have a link to that in the show notes. So now let's meet our guests. Eamon, please tell us a bit about yourself.
Thanks, Bobby, and thanks for having me/us. My name is Eamon McErlean. I've been at ServiceNow for, it'll be actually 3 years. My title is VP and Global Head of Accessibility and Globalization. Prior to ServiceNow, I was fortunate enough to work for just over 7 years at Apple, at the same time at Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines, and just under 5 years at Nike. And I've been involved in the accessibility arena for about 11, 12 years now in total.
It's been around for a long time, but for many of us, it's still kind of a new thing that we're actually exploring, and it's beyond the accessibility of ramps and handrails. We're getting into the meat of it in our everyday life with, as we're going to find out, nearly everybody. Which brings me to you, Tony. Please introduce yourself so everybody knows who you are and your background and role here at ServiceNow.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Eamon. Delighted to be here today. My name is Tony Morales. I've been at ServiceNow for going on 5 years. For the past 3 years, I've held various roles in accessibility at ServiceNow, leading everything from customer engagement to working on global accessibility strategies. And now I am focused on integrating accessibility into our design process. My goal is to embed accessibility into everything that we do here at ServiceNow. I myself am a visually impaired computer user who relies exclusively on screen reading technology. It happens to be VoiceOver on all of Apple's platforms, though I have used others as well. And I use that every single day to do my job and things outside of work.
Wow. So this is going to be a really informative talk because we've got people working in it, people who are using it, and this is going to be great for everyone to really learn how this process works and the benefits behind it. To start off, Eamon, I want to ask you, just talk about the state of accessibility here at ServiceNow. What are we doing? Maybe some new plans and initiatives that are happening here at ServiceNow.
I think, going back to the start 3 years ago when we started the team, we aligned with our leadership team to categorize accessibility as a product. And that's a big distinguishing factor, meaning that ensures that we are prioritized and the applicable capacity is allocated via Big Rocks. We are currently on our 5th consecutive Big Rock, which is, an all-time record. And it just shows the commitment overall that our leadership team have, and indeed the company has, to accessibility. I think for us, it's always broken down into 3 key areas. One is improving conformance and overall usability. 2 is ensuring that we double down on accessibility features and new preferences. And then 3, which Tony's touched upon before, is truly embedding accessibility into our product development lifecycle and ensuring that we do not think of it anymore as an afterthought. It's part of the overall process. I think those are as a macro level, they're the 3 key areas.
So that shift in thinking from accessibility as a need to accessibility as a product is a big change in thinking. Explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think many companies think of accessibility as an add-on, as new preferences. But when we can drive it as a product, examples being some of the new features that we've come out with. The idea being that Accessibility features truly benefit everyone. They really do. And we all use accessibility features every day, whether we realize it or not. But that categorization of a product, rather than just, an additional step or an incremental piece in the product lifecycle, it's key because, again, it helps with prioritization and ensuring that we are allocated what we need to be allocated. Many companies treat it like they would maybe security or performance, and those are key areas, and they try to embed those in. But when you take a step back and look at how accessibility benefits everyone and overall usability, that helps us ensure that we are aligned at a platform level and across our product and our customers for what we want to prioritize as we move forward.
Talking about product, I know, with ServiceNow, we have Now Assist and some things coming out. Is there just briefly some cool things that are coming out that you can talk about tools wise that accessibility plays a big role in or a part of using accessibility within the ServiceNow products?
We have indeed, yep. One of our product team members, Michael Elgo, is just in the process of releasing a new dyslexia/Chrome plugin, which ensures that any of our users that are neurodiverse can set their parameters of their screen and the text on the screen to ensure the spacing is there between words, spacing between letters, and even spacing between sentences. It sounds very, simplistic, but the benefit can be incredible from the end users that require that type of setup. We also starting to embed in accessibility checkers into some of our builders, including UIB. So what that does is ensures that any of our customers that utilize our building tools like UIB, that whatever they create is also conformant and keeps them, at the same level that we want to be as a platform company. We've done numerous other features, which we can go through, and I think we'll touch upon it maybe later on, but ensuring that we utilize Gen AI for the right reasons, and including one of our upcoming features called Voice Assist, and being able to generate an entire customer journey via a conversational AI. Again, it just shows the benefit of how accessibility features can truly benefit absolutely everyone across the board.
I know you had explained some of that before, and we're going to get into it deeper. And Tony, I know you're going to key on some of this, but that idea that accessibility is not there to only help people with an accessibility needs, that there are things that all of us are using every day that were originally an accessibility tool that are now part of our daily life, like the machines talking back to us and Zoom Gen AI notes that are just things that are so commonplace that these were accessibility tools originally, correct?
That's correct. And a really great example is all of the research several decades ago into speech recognition to be able to speak using your voice and have your computer understand you. And that technology was primarily used initially by users who cannot physically type on a keyboard. Perhaps they have hand strain or they don't have use of their hands at all for whatever reason. But then over time, as those algorithms got more sophisticated, you saw this technology being embedded into things like Apple's Siri or Amazon Alexa or other voice assistants. And now being able to talk to your devices is so ubiquitous that it's easy to forget that there was a time when you just could not do that, or when the technology, even if you had it, was so primitive. Back in the day, you had to train your computer for many hours so that it would recognize your unique voice. And now anyone can just walk up to a device and start talking, and it's going to understand them.
I want to ask you about that, Tony, specifically because when it comes to accessibility in the past and how far we've come, why did it take so long for us to get there? Is there something that we missed? Was there a switch that got flipped? Why are we now finally looking at accessibility as not only a business tool, a good thing to do, and everyone's using it?
Bobby, that's such a great question. And we can partly step off the path into speculation. I don't think that there was any one particular switch that got flipped and all of a sudden, wow, the lights are on and there is this awareness. There were several events along the way, and companies are still learning. Companies are still realizing that accessibility is the right thing to do. In the past, you have the landmark Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, in 1990. I think we just passed the anniversary on July 26th of that. Several other laws and standards have been implemented mandating accessibility compliance. And that's certainly important. But what really has helped is empathy, because empathy drives awareness, which we will get into in a bit. Being able to actually know someone with a disability and see firsthand their struggles and their successes, that really gets right to the heart of empathy. There's a statistic by the World Health Organization that over 1 billion people have some form of disability. Other stats put that as high as 1 in 4. That's 25% of the population has some form of disability. Not all disabilities are noticeable, can be seen. Some are hidden. For a long time, persons with disabilities often felt afraid to disclose their disability for fear of being labeled or discriminated against. And what we're seeing now in younger generations, take Gen Z, for example, is a much stronger comfort in disclosing their disability status. There's another statistic that we on the team use all the time when talking about accessibility, and that is around 53% of Gen Zers identify with having some form of neurodiversity disability. That's huge. That's something that you did not see in prior generations. And I think as people become more open in disclosing their disability, it becomes harder to ignore. And so as you have this increased awareness, which drives empathy, which drives results, you're seeing a lot more companies actually paying attention to accessibility and taking it seriously.
I know the number sounds so high to a lot of people. And then you start thinking about it, it's like, well, 1 in 4, that could be someone in my family who has needs something along the lines of better accessibility. And then connect that to neurodiversity. Eamon, you mentioned dyslexia, and that now we can fix these things relatively easily and bake them in. Seems kind of like a no-brainer. And Eamon, I want to ask you about that change, that awareness, that openness that we're seeing from a business standpoint and maybe personally. What attracted you to this world of accessibility?
Before I answer that, I just want to, call out Tony's stat, which is, to me, it's an incredible stat that Gen Zers, the 53%, are identifying themselves as being some type of neurodiverse in the spectrum. I think when you put that in perspective, right, that's the age group of between, I believe, approximately 12 and 27 years old. That's the new generation. That's the new work generation coming in. And unless we are truly aware of that and appreciate that, I think we're going to miss many, many opportunities to ensure that we do the right thing for the upcoming workforce. Why did I get involved? Honestly, I'd love to say for the right reasons, but it wasn't really for the right reasons. I got involved when I used to work at Apple and leading up quality engineering for Apple retail stores. And we had built this program where we were bringing in retail store team members to Apple headquarters to do what we call the UAT, user acceptance testing, for new features, be it on the point of sale systems, retail inventory, procurement systems, etc. And it was my ignorance that I had not involved individuals with different disabilities. And I got a call one day from the senior leader at Apple. Basically, there was a complaint made that some of the features and functionality within what they called Easy Pay, which is the POS system at Apple, was not functional for users with different disabilities. And again, complete oversight on my behalf.
I know Tony and I talked about this when we were kind of setting up this podcast, because I remember sitting there getting an ad in Instagram that it said a statistic, something like 1 in 10 purchasers are deaf. Are you reaching them? And I was like, holy moly, 10% of the people buying my thing can't buy my thing if I don't make it easy for somebody who is deaf to do that. And that sounds like, on a business side, it's like,
why would you not do that? Exactly. Well, yeah, I know. It's an absolute no-brainer. Like, why would you not do it? I heard this great saying a couple of years ago, and it was, just because you can't see it, don't assume it's not there. And from accessibility perspective, it's such a great saying because you may be in a room, in a conference or anywhere with a bunch of people that have different disabilities and you have no idea. You have no idea to look at that individual. And I think it ties back into why I got involved. A, for the wrong reason, and B, to be very transparent, I've suffered with depression on and off throughout my life. I talk about it because I detest that there's still a stigma around depression. It is a mental illness, and I think we need to address it. And it ties into when I started getting engaged with those individuals coming from the stores with different disabilities. It helped me. It actually really helped me from my own mindset, seeing what these specific individuals had to go through, the challenges they had to face every day. Putting it bluntly, it kind of inspired me a bit and gave me the courage to put things in perspective for my own mindset. Now, again, it doesn't negate some of the depression challenges that I had to face and go through, but it honestly helped me. It worked for me. It really did. And that's why I always try to make sure from that point forward, it would be a part of my career path and I'd be involved with it. And I've been fortunate enough since then to work with individuals like Tony and many individuals with different disabilities that help me continue that journey. So I feel humbled and proud to be able to say that.
I'm glad you say that because it is kind of one of those things we do have to think about every day. Aside from all the, creating amazing technologies, we're helping people. That's a good thing.
It is. It is. And then going back to the core question about why is this an afterthought? Like, it should be a no-brainer. I think it's from the basic perspective of inclusion. We work in the software development and Scrum teams. They do their own thing. They think about features and functionality and designs and the way it should be. Unless you are engaged with individuals with different disabilities that can share that perspective of, have you thought about color contrast? Oh, have you thought about spacing? Oh, have you thought about the tab order and how the elements are numbered in different labels and ARIA labels and, alt tags? Unless that inclusion is there with those individuals, it's not that we don't want to think about it. It's just it's not thought of because that participation isn't there. And then since it's an afterthought, it ends up costing us more money and time going back and fixing what should have been done inclusively at the start. So it's truly just about inclusion right from the start. That's why in Tony's role now, it's so critical with our design teams and our employees and getting those individuals engaged as early as possible in that life cycle to make sure that whatever we do build is truly inclusive.
That sets up that concept of empathy, which gets thrown around a lot. But it's so important when you're designing. It's how are we collectively going to use that? And Tony, I want to ask you about that because I know you've got a very strong opinion about this. Talk to us about how that empathy works from somebody really taking advantage of a lot of accessibility tools.
It is so interesting explaining to engineers and designers, hey, I can't use your software. Why not? Why not? It's great. All of our other users have no issues with it. And when you're dealing in software, there are so many little hiccups that as an engineer you don't think of. You might be using this really nice web framework that's off the shelf. You can just plug it into your project and never for a second give a thought as to whether or not that web framework is accessible or not. And if that framework happens to not be accessible, then the entire content of your web page is just going to be blank when a screen reader user tries to read that content. And let's say that you've gone to the trouble to ensure that the framework that you're using is accessible and you make a great v1.0 product that's reasonably accessible, we'll say. And then, oh my gosh, there's this latest and greatest framework that is drop-in replacement and it's going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to be faster. And then, oops, you realize that, oh gosh, it's not accessible either. So something so simple as just upgrading a component of your software can actually break months and sometimes years of prior accessibility work, meaning that you kind of have to start over, which really gets to the heart of the importance of shifting left and getting this all into the design process, the product development lifecycle process as far left as possible so that you don't have these problems where you find out when it's too late, oh gosh, this just broke 2-3 years of work.
I think And as you both are explaining this, it's not just the, okay, how do we help this person in their daily life? I work with people who are working on my team, who are helping to create the next latest and greatest thing, who need this help. It's part of the business plan, correct?
Very much so. But I'm going to go back to the word empathy again, because speaking for myself and only for myself, I just hate to watch users struggle trying to use software. And I myself, having grown up in a world of sometimes very questionably accessible software, have my own struggles. I feel like a veteran of like having fought many and many and many battles trying to get through a piece of software that is either not accessible at all or partly accessible. So I know how much I don't like to see myself having to struggle, but I just hate watching other users do that too. And there's a classic example of one of the customers I was working with when I was leading customer engagement for accessibility at ServiceNow. I was watching this user having to hit tab, the tab key to advance the focus in keyboard navigation, 72 times. I am not making that figure up. 72 times to get to the button that they wanted to interact with on a page on one of our products. And it's like, no, 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 no. Hit pause. We have to do something about that. Even if it's something as just taking, 10 minutes out of my time to train this user how to more effectively use the software they already have, that is worth the 10 minutes out of my day to keep somebody from having to hit tab 72 times. And, getting at the heart of empathy, I'll share this quick anecdote because I think it kind of gets to the heart of why empathy is so important. And my belief that if you distill accessibility down to one single core element, that single element is, in fact, empathy. We recently celebrated Global Accessibility Awareness Day here at ServiceNow, which for the audience is the third Thursday every May. And we celebrated Global Accessibility Awareness Day with several awareness campaigns, including booths at a wellness festival in 3 cities across our ServiceNow offices. I ran one of the booths. A couple of my colleagues ran the others. We had an employee come up to our booth and ask us, "So what are you all about?" And we said, "Oh, we're here to raise awareness about accessibility." And this employee looked at us, said, and I quote, "Accessibility, I don't need that," and then walked away. And that was so powerful in its brevity that it made me realize that this employee, in fact, very much needed to learn about accessibility, because what I saw was a total lack of empathy and just simply walking away and not being more curious to find out more what this is. I don't know what this is. Maybe I should find out. So it really got me thinking that if you take all of the compliance and the laws and everything aside and distill accessibility down, accessibility equals empathy, and it's the right thing to do.
You think about this, and Eamon, I'm sure you have better things to say than this, but I'm gonna mention this and I'll cut it out later if necessary. One of the best video editors and directors I worked with was colorblind, and he learned how to use all the tools. And I was like, I don't even know how to use those tools. You figured out how to use the tools to do this with math. Okay, you're 10 times smarter than I'll ever be. And I'm sure that's not an isolated incident, correct, Eamon?
No, it's not. I've never worked with as not just inquisitive, but ingenious team members of those individuals that have to work with software that's not accessible because they have to find a way, right? They have to find a way around it to get their work done. And listen, when you think about it, I've never met an individual with a disability that wants to be treated special, that wants, special treatment. They want the same as everyone else. They want to be able to utilize the features and functionality just like everyone else can. And it's our responsibility to ensure they can do that. And, not building it inclusively enough isn't an excuse. It's not. It's not. It's not the right thing. Tony would know way more about having to do workarounds and being able to utilize tools that are not built accessibility friendly. But I've seen it myself, and I think we all agree that one of the best things you can do is just spend some time with a team member or a co-worker that has different types of disabilities and understand what they go through on a daily basis. It's very hard for the empathy level not to go up. It really, really is, no matter what type of person you are. Once you see that, the light bulb can go off. And Tony knows I have this saying where empathy drives awareness and awareness instigates action. And I think if I had one wish for everyone at the company, it would be just expose yourself to it. Understand what individuals have to go through when software is not built properly, and it can change your mindset forever. It can.
I have to segue now, because if we don't segue and talk about AI,
there's no way we're not going to talk about AI, right?
But in this instance, it's like, wow, this is amazing, because AI has removed, I think, for a lot of people who have to make accessibility products, the ability to go, it's too hard, it's too difficult, I don't want to do it. Well, we're now sitting with all of these tools that have now made it better, faster, and easier. Who wants to be the one to lead the charge on telling us how awesome the AI tools are? Because I know both of you work with them in different capacities. How is the AI that we're working with game-changing?
Oh, that is a great question, Bobby. I am one of those individuals that dove headfirst into AI, realizing early what the potential was. And frankly, I didn't care what I landed on or how long it would take me to get there. I just dove headfirst into AI, and I am glad every step of the way that I did, because AI is still very, very, very much in its infancy. And what we are seeing from AI in terms of accessibility is just phenomenal. Everything from being able to describe the contents of photos, to use services like ChatGPT to engage in a dialogue where you can ask it more fine-tuned questions about photos. So it might describe a person with a scenic backdrop. Okay, so tell me more about that backdrop. What are we looking at here? Or which one of these 3 photos is the clearest for me to post on social media? It completely removes the guesswork of having to determine which photo is the best to post or ask a colleague or whatever. You can have AI do that for you. Or being able to point your phone at a touch screen, like on a kiosk. Let's say you want to go and pour a soft drink, and you have 15 to 20 different selections, and the machine itself is not accessible. But if you point your phone's camera at the keypad, it can tell you which selection your finger is over before you press it. So using your phone, you can actually use touchscreen devices that on their own are not accessible. The AI on your phone makes them accessible. And again, this is still very much in its infancy. And to be able to do these things, particularly the photo description, is one of those holy grails that even as recently as 10 years ago.
Eamon, that's where I want you to give us the breakdown and some of the insights into the future of just how AI is really being utilized in the tools we're making here, a little bit more than we talked about earlier here at ServiceNow.
I think the biggest thing for us as in ServiceNow and Gen AI and accessibility is to ensure that whatever we do from a Gen AI perspective, again, is inclusive, that we are thinking about accessibility. So I think it's important for 2 things. One, that we, ServiceNow, are recognized as not just being a leader in Gen AI, but being a leader in inclusive Gen AI, including ensuring that whatever we do from a feature functionality perspective is involving those individuals to help better their lives. And 2, partner with so many leaders across the globe. There's very few areas, when I say areas, I mean like departments. If you take like marketing or sales or procurement or software development or engineering, there's very few areas like accessibility where even our competitors share what they're doing with us. It's a very, very collaborative arena, and we got to take advantage of that and ensure that the bottom line is accessibility doesn't get left behind again, the way it has done when the .NET and the .com boom come up. Like, why we're talking about accessibility now is because it was left behind. That's the truth. It was. It was an afterthought. As idiotic as that sounds, it was an afterthought. With the rate that Gen AI is going, we can't afford to make that same mistake again with accessibility. We really can't. So not only do we have to be on that bus now, we want to be driving that bus and be recognized as a leader in truly inclusive Gen AI. So voice assist, we touched upon earlier, the idea that our product team come up with is a completely voice-driven conversational AI initially with Now Assist, but then ultimately directly integrate it with all of our configurable workspaces. So you can, update specific fields. You can go in there and add detailed descriptions and hear it back as well and simplify, and everything purely 100% conversational AI. That's what we're hoping to release the POC for next year. That's just the first step. We're going to take it from there.
This science fiction is becoming science reality way too quickly.
It is. It is.
If there was one thing that you would want people to understand about accessibility from a business standpoint, what would it be?
It's funny. We've talked about empathy. We've talked about awareness and how that can impact an individual and make sure that they become more involved and ensure they do the right thing. I think the one thing one thing more than anything else, I'll cheat a little bit. We all will need it at some point. Be it visually impaired, as you get older, we will all go through some type of disability in our lives, either situational, temporary, or permanent. We all will. So it will impact you at some point. And our leaders recognize this. We're turning this into a competitive advantage. We're doing it for the right reasons. But if you do accessibility well, not only do you end up having the most inclusive, productive software possible, but our customers see that, and it eliminates any of the constraints, be it the bylaws or the guidelines they may have in Europe or any other country to be accessible. Like, we surpass that. And our competitors are starting to see that. And even for RFPs and bids that we're going into, we're starting to be recognized more as a leader. And that actually helps us in the long run from a business growth perspective. So it will impact you, even if it's not now, it will individually, and doing the right thing can pay off, and it will pay off in the long run.
Kudos to A and B that Eamon just mentioned, to which I will add C. If we do our job right and turn accessibility into a competitive advantage, making our customers happy, that's going to do another thing that I think a lot of people should really pay attention to, and that is persons with disabilities who might have thought they did not belong at ServiceNow may realize, I actually could go and work for that company. And this is something that we are embracing. And by bringing that pool of talent into ServiceNow, that pool of talent that is sitting on the sidelines, again, maybe they think, I'm just not cut out for a career in IT. Stuff isn't accessible. I can't use any of their software. Well, with ServiceNow and what we're doing, yes, you can. And you too belong here at ServiceNow. And what we talked about earlier in talking about persons with disabilities having to get really, really good at workarounds, having to live and exist in a world that wasn't necessarily made for them, to be able to have those different ways of thinking, working for your company, that really speaks right to the heart of our people pack here at ServiceNow and upholding our diverse and inclusive work environment.
So there you have it. I hope we've given you a better understanding of the world of accessibility. And if you like this episode, please hit subscribe on whatever device you're listening on so you never miss an episode. I'm Bobby Brill. Thanks for listening.